Have you ever wanted or needed a bag for multi-purpose use, or a bag that you don't need to worry about your important items such as your phone or laptop? Then Knack Bags are the bag for you. Knack Bags are your everyday bag for work, travel, and leisure. Knack Bags come with a fully padded interior to keep your electronics safe. With its sleek design, organized interior, and professional appearance, it looks great at work or on the street and expands for more capacity when you need it.
Get a Knack Bag today and stop worrying about how you look when carrying your life essentials. Use the code GAME, and for a limited time, get a free TSA-approved lock with purchase. Just add the TSA lock to your cart with your Knack Bag of choice and use the code GAME at the checkout to get it for free.
This is Game On, discussing the biggest games and all the latest sports news with Johnny Montalbano and Hank Indictor on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network.
It's showtime, folks. It's episode 11 of Game On, presented by Knack, here on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. Johnny Montalbano, Hank Indictor with you as we have another jam-packed edition of the show. Hank, welcome. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Getting ready for the Rangers to tie the series tonight. Other than that, I'm excellent. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm doing great. You know, I was curious how we were going to feel coming into this show with the Rangers and the Hurricane series, and we will get to that obviously in just a couple of moments. But I'm doing wonderful. You know, heading towards the end of May, and certainly no ton of stuff to discuss. So I'm thrilled. And of course, folks, there are plenty of ways that you can interact with us on the show. You can follow us on Twitter at GameOnETB. We're also on Facebook at facebook.com/GameOnETB, and also our Instagram account, GameOn_ETB. And yeah, so let's do it. Of course, we have a lot to get to here as we wrap up the month of May. We've got some hockey, which we'll get to in just a couple of moments. We've got a lot of baseball locally with the Mets and the Yankees that we're going to get to. NBA playoffs. We've got even a college football story. We're 100 days now away from the start of college football season. Yes, I am rushing it along, folks. Sorry, everybody who wants the summer off. I'm sorry, but I'm excited for that. But yes, we've got that. We've even got some other stuff.
Don't I get to enjoy my baseball season?
Oh, of course, we can enjoy baseball. Actually, this year, yes, because in years past, the regular season's kind of been a dud. This year, I think it's a little different, especially when you look at the Yanks and the Mets. So, all right, that's fair. But yeah, we'll get to all that. We got so much to get to. But Hank, obviously, third straight show. We're going to start with the Rangers because they are still in it. Second round of the Stanley Cup Playoffs, and they got a big Game 3 win on Sunday against the Hurricanes. They still trail the series 2-1, but obviously a much-needed win for them on Sunday. And some things that you definitely did like coming out of that game. Igor Shesterkin, continuing to be the Vezina Trophy guy that we've seen, and he has really been. I mean, let's be honest. He's been a big reason why the Rangers are in this situation. I mean, if you only had an average goaltender, the Rangers wouldn't even be getting out of the first round. They wouldn't have even been making the playoffs. So you have to like that. And, looking at Game 3, Hank, production from the top two lines, huge. Kreider scoring, Mika scoring. I mean, those guys were held in check through the first two games. So you have to like that. And I had said on our ETB Sports Minute that dropped on Monday, if Igor continues to be Igor, if the Rangers can get production from these top players, and if they go down to Raleigh and win Game 5, or possibly if the series goes 7, win Game 7, then the Rangers can win the series. We spoke last week that I did not like this matchup. I thought the Hurricanes were a better team. I thought they'd win in 5, but if the Rangers get like what they got in Game 3 going into Game 4 later tonight and later on in the series, then you do have to like the Rangers' chances here.
Yeah, I said Carolina in 6, and you pretty much nailed it on the head. I think the top line really is key to them winning this series, and it's funny because that first game of that series, it really looked like they were going to steal that game, and I think had they won that would have been the first true steal that Igor would have had during the playoffs, in my opinion. But obviously, we know what happened. It didn't really work out that way. And then game 2, like, not really not so much the top 6. I think it was pretty much everyone that was held in check despite Igor's best efforts. And what really hurt in that game was the one regular goal. I'm not talking about the empty netter at the end, was given up while they were like on a 4-minute double minor power play that former Ranger Brady Shea took. But, game 3 was absolutely a must win. The Garden, while it was still rocking, it was a little more emptier than I had expected. But obviously, being a New Yorker, I think we pretty much know why. But at the end of the day, you got production from Kreider and Mika. And let's face it, we need Kreider to be more consistent. We don't want him to turn into like the ghost that everyone accused him of being a couple years ago, when he would score like in the high 20s, but he would go on those stretches where he wouldn't be as productive. So that was really important. Although the one heart attack moment I had was right at the end when Kreider missed that easy empty net goal. I was like, oh no, they're going to tie it. But fortunately, that fear was put to rest when Tyler Mott shot the puck all the way down, and as fate would have it, it just landed in the empty net goal. And like, everyone at the Garden was going nuts. It was really exciting. And you know what? I can't wait for game 4. I really like their chances to tie the series. And look, I'm going to be honest with you. I think this is just as much, if not maybe more so, of a must-win game than game 3, because look, Carolina, like you said, as much as I thought that the Rangers had a chance to upset in the series, there's also a reason that I picked them to win in 6 games. This is a team that's still very deep. They're big, they're physical, they're really fast. Not a team you can take lightly, and 3-1 against them is going to be 10 times more difficult than trying to do it against, say, Pittsburgh. But you win today, and then all of a sudden you go to game 5, and then really anything can happen, because now they have the pressure since they haven't lost a home game yet, and they'll realize how important that is. But yeah, I'm definitely excited. And look, at the end of the day, win or lose this series, I do have to say I am still really proud of what this Rangers team has done this year. And you have to think that they're heading in the right direction. That's a talk I want to have later on down the line.
Yeah, for sure. And I agree with you. This is a huge game tonight because you said it. The Hurricanes are a different team away from Raleigh. It truly is incredible. We saw that in their opening round series against the Boston Bruins, how they looked so dominant at home, and yet away from Raleigh, they just look like an entirely different team. So if the Rangers can, exploit that and win tonight, make it a best of 3 and steal, and I will use your word, steal one down on the road, then the Rangers.
I didn't copyright steal. You can use it.
It's okay. No, you're good. But it is great. And again, what you saw in game 3 also was the resilient nature of this team, the no quit in New York mentality, because they looked like, it was a struggle down 2-0, and they come out fast. Absolutely. And that's what I was thinking, down 2-0. It felt like they were down, not out, but down. And they come out fast, they score, and they had a couple of chances to add on a couple of goals early on, but Antti Ranta, who stepped in for Anderson, has been very, very good for the Hurricanes, and I think it just also speaks to how great Carolina is. So when you look at it, again, your special teams, big thing here. We've seen that production from the top line, and they continue to get that into game 4. Then absolutely, you're looking at least a tied series, and who knows the way things could break in games 5, 6, and possibly even 7.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really the beauty of the Stanley Cup playoffs. You can't always rely on the team that's the best one to win it all. I think really it's really all about survival of the fittest. And if you really think about it, that might be one of the few playoffs where you can truly say that.
I totally agree, and I think that's why I agree. I think that's why the Stanley Cup playoffs are great, because we've seen top seeds, go out. We just saw it down in Florida, where the Lightning got past the Panthers. They not only they get past them, they swept them, and now they're going to have a lot of time to relax and get healthy and get everything back together before they face one of these two teams, and what they're
And
doing.
I have to tell you, I was not surprised at all that Tampa won the series. My biggest surprise, however, was that they swept the Panthers in 4 straight. But it goes back to what I told you before that series even began. Like, I wasn't all that impressed with their series win over the Capitals. I mean, I know they had to come back to do it and they had to fight and claw their way. No pun intended, considering their team name.
Yeah.
But when you look at how they played during the regular season, scoring goals was always one of their strengths. But the problem was their defense was always hit or miss. And you can get away with that against maybe the lower tier teams in the regular season. It's pretty much one reason why they won a lot of games. But when you're going up against a team like the Tampa Bay Lightning, who have the experience and are just extremely stacked and have pretty much something that not too many other teams have, then you're in big trouble. And look, it showed. They got, as my buddy Noah from the Sports Box would say, boat raced. But good for them. They're on to the next round. They'll have time to rest up, and they're going to have a pretty tough challenge regardless of who wins this series, though. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, and it's just remarkable when you look at it, because in sports in general, it's very hard to see teams repeat. And now the Lightning are going through a possibility that they may win 3 in a row, and that is something that is so rare. I mean, we may never see this again, just because of between free agency and the way teams draft and just the nature of sports now compared to years past. It's hard to do.
And look, people are going to tell me, oh, they did this during a bubble year and then they did it during a shortened season because of COVID. No,
Yeah, so
I don't want to hear that. That Lightning team was always talented. It was just a matter of when they would win a Stanley Cup. So I figured with that core, it would pretty much be inevitable. And, you know, even though he's no longer the GM of the team, you really have to give a lot of credit to Stevie Y, because look where they were before. Look where they were, like maybe say 10 years ago. They were pretty much one of the jokes of the league. Jeffrey Vinnick, who's probably one of the best owners in the NHL, hires him, and then he pretty much builds them from the ground up. He has a lot of good drafts, and then unfortunately he ends up going back to his home with the Detroit Red Wings before he really got to see all that hard work he did win a cup. But still, it really is amazing. Although I will say this, if the Rangers can't win a cup, and selfishly, I wouldn't mind if they three-peat, if only because you know who the last three-peat winner in NHL history was, and I can't even say their name. You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, we know who you are saying. Yep. But let me just mention one quick thing about the Rangers, and then I just want to touch base on the other series real quick. One thing to watch for also in Game 4 here is possibly some fighting or some choice words. You saw at the end of Game 3 the situation with Lindgren and Domi, and that even transpired to D'Angelo and Gallant going at it at the end there. So maybe there's a little choice words leading to some action that possibly could happen in Game 4.
Can I just say, if Tony D'Angelo is lucky that Gallant has long since retired.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I had to put that out there.
Yeah. I had saw they actually were showing video after that incident, after that thing at the end of Game 3 of Gallant when he was playing, how much of a fighter that he was.
I've never seen Gallant up close. I've only seen him drive up in his white Volvo, and the times where I've showed up really early to games. But I would bet you that if I'd seen him up close, he probably has hands like bricks.
Yeah. So we could see a little bit of action in Game 4 here, but yeah, it's great because again, the resiliency of this team now. Possibly they go out and win Game 4 tonight. It's a brand new series going down to Carolina, and obviously we just spoke about the Lightning getting past the Panthers real quick. One of the crazy thing in the Stanley Cup playoffs we'll get to before we switch gears here, Hank, is out west. You've got the Avalanche and the Blues, Colorado leading 3-1. You've got the Oilers leading the Flames 2-1. You had a 9-6 game in Game 1 there. This other crazy story, though, that broke in the last couple of days was in that Colorado and St. Louis series where Maxim Kadri was getting death threats for running into and injuring Binnington, the goaltender, and he ends up going out last night and scoring a hat trick. So quite a crazy scene. They were saying how There was extra security at the hotel and also around the stadium because of what was going on. It's like, we think about, the crazy things that we hear locally, and we see like the actions of fan bases and stuff. And then you see like death threats to a player just because he took out a goaltender. It's like, wow.
No, this is stuff that happens in hockey. Like to give a guy a death threat over that. I mean, look, whether it was intentional or not, that's not relevant. Fans I hate hearing stuff like that. And that's why I was extra glad when he scored that hat trick. And look, Colorado, even though St. Louis was one team that I thought could very well be a threat to Colorado, I think that series is pretty much over and done with. I think either in game 5 or game 6, Colorado's pretty much going to finish them off. And I think they're in really good shape. And this is a team that I really thought could very well win the cup. I mean, if there's anybody that I think could be a challenge to the Lightning, assuming that they get past the conference finals, I think that's going to be the one.
Yeah, they easily disposed of the Predators, and now they're up 3-1 against the Blues. I agree with you, and they've been talked about a lot. And you look at the Canada series, and both of those teams won 7 games in the opening round. Now they're shooting out pretty much. They had a 9-6 game in game 1. And that series could go 7 games when you look at Calgary and Edmonton. So the Avalanche will have a lot of rest probably in that one. And I agree. Oh, yeah. I think right now the way things are looking, and of course, this is hockey, so anything could change. It is definitely shaping up to be an Avalanche Lightning Stanley Cup final. And of course, then the meteorologists will have a lot of fun with puns there. Which is stronger, an Avalanche or a Lightning? The meteorologists will have fun.
Yeah. Or hurricanes if God forbid.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Hurricane Lightning. Wow, that would be something. But let's hope that we don't have to. Let's hope we don't have to think about that being a possibility. Yep. We'll find out. Game 4 of the Rangers and Hurricanes are tonight, and we'll see what happens when we're back here for episode 12. Where the Rangers are at. But Hank, obviously a ton to discuss here, and we'll switch gears and mix some baseball into the course of the conversation. We haven't discussed a lot with baseball because it's been relatively quiet regarding the Mets and the Yankees because both teams taking care of business right now as we get into the end of May here, and both of them dealing with the best records in baseball in the American League and National League respectively, but also now they're starting to deal with some injury problems. And we'll start here with the Mets because they continue to take care of business. They got past the Giants out in San Francisco last night, 13-3. But the news broke this past week. You saw Max Scherzer had to take himself out of the game. And, Scherzer's a tough guy. So when he ended up calling for the trainer and said that he was done, you knew that something wasn't right. Suffered a significant oblique strain. He's going to be out. Right now they're saying 6 to 8 weeks. And that's now on top of Jacob deGrom, who's still out for a while, and Tyler McGill, who might probably be back before those two. And you look at it, though, there's still 8 games in front of them in the NL East. And I saw a lot of posts come down this past week about, the Mets now, here we go again with the Mets, or same old Mets, or now the season's over because Max Scherzer is out. But I got to tell you now, again, this comes from a guy in me that said they were not going to win the NL East. I still think there's a possibility that's going to happen. But this year, to me, Hank, is different with the Mets because, yes, is the Max Scherzer injury going to hurt? No pun intended.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna hurt them because now you're going to be relying a lot on Taijuan Walker, who could give you 7 scoreless like he did in Colorado, or he could go 3 1/3 and give you 5 runs. And also Carlos Carrasco, who has had some good starts this year. He's pitched well. Chris Bassett, now that trade looks even better when they got him from Oakland, and David Peterson. They're talking about some guys down in the minors as well. But while this is going to hurt, to me, this feels different with the Mets this year. And I'll tell you why. Because this lineup, as long as they're all healthy, this lineup is the best it's looked in quite some time. Alonso's leading the National League in RBIs. Lindor, while he's had some struggles here in the month of May, looked better than he did last year. Nimmo gets on base. You've got other guys. McNeil's looking like the Jeff McNeil of a couple of years ago. And I'll tell you one of the big difference with the Mets this year than in years past. They've got a capable manager at the helm in Buck Showalter. This is not Luis Rojas. This is not Mickey Callaway from years ago. This is the best manager in the best situation the Mets have been in since Terry Collins, who was so underappreciated as Met manager. I mean, that guy did more with less with the Mets than anybody I've ever seen. I mean, he had the years the Mets were making deep runs. He was having Eric Campbell batting cleanup because of the injuries they had, and they still made it into the playoffs. And obviously made that World Series in 15. But with Buck Showalter at the helm, with the lineup the way that it's constructed is right now, I think this is different. I think the Mets are going to be all right. While this injury will hurt and they may go through a slump, I still think this team is going to be at the bare minimum contending for at least a wild card spot.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I mean, look, I'm not gonna say it's like, same old Mets in the sense that, like, the collapses they've had and whatnot and the managers. I will say this though, if you're without either DeGrom or Scherzer for an extended amount of time, it could very well come back to hurt. And I'm not saying this so much because it's the Mets and their history. My concern could be, watch out for the Braves. What if they start to get in a bit of a rhythm? I mean, remember, this is the team that won the World Series just 1 year ago. If they get a healthy pitching staff, I mean, I think that's another team you really have to worry about because they could really be on their heels in only a matter of time. But, like you said, I'm going to agree to disagree only for the sense because of who's chasing the Mets. But as far as who their manager is and what their lineup looks like, yes, I do agree that the lineup is definitely in better shape. The one concern I have is Francisco Lindor. I know he got off to a good start, but having a 228 batting average at this point, you can't tell me that's not a concern, because especially with that contract that he has. But having him at shortstop, at least with fielding, though, it's I think they'll still be okay with that part. But, and again, like you said, Buck Showalter is still one of the better possible managers that they could have had. So I think you're right in the sense that it's a different team, but at the same time, losing a Scherzer and a DeGrom when you got all excited about having them to begin the season, that's got to be a bit of, I don't know if I would say either a yellow or red flag, yellowish reddish flag, if you want to put it that way. But yeah, no, they'll be okay, hopefully.
Yeah, I'll give you two other nuggets also on the Mets here. They also got Steve Cohen, who's not afraid to spend what he needs to spend. The Mets are going to go out and get another bat because they will need another bat somewhere in this lineup. I mean, the lineup is, for the most part, been good this year, but I mean, there's still some flaws. They're not really getting much out of third base, whether it's Escobar or J.D. Davis. So I think they're going to go out and get another bat. The catching position right now is going to be a little bit iffy with James McCann being out for 6 weeks, but Mazika stepped in and done all right. Nito's done well, and it's almost like the Yankees. You know what? As long as they both call a good game, you could live with the fact that you may not get much offensively out of that position this year. But you're going to see them get another bat somewhere along the way. They may even go out and get another pitcher, whether it's the starter or the bullpen. But at the same time, and this was part of the reason why I said that the Mets to me were not an NL East division winning team. This rotation was also a little iffy because, let's face it, Max Scherzer is 37 years old. It's not like they brought in a stud. Now, Max Scherzer's a stud, but he's not a stud like he's in his late 20s or anything. He's in his late 30s. And, you have Jacob deGrom, who is breaking down or has broken down. I mean, let's totally be honest now. This is almost 2 years of this with deGrom, and he's 34 years old. If he's still going to want to opt out, then you know what? Let him opt out. And if you're the Mets, you can't bring him back. But he's not. I think he's going to have second thoughts about that, especially because we were told that he was going to probably pitch in June, and he still hasn't even done any rehab starts. I mean, I know his MRI came back better this past week, but he's still got to, ramp himself up. So, yeah, you're going to be dealing with, I'd say the duration of Scherzer's injury is also how long DeGrom's going to be out. So, yeah, that is going to hurt. But it's different to me with Showalter and Cohen at the helm, the lineup the way it is. I think the Mets are going to be all right. Will there be a slump somewhere along the way? I think it's natural to expect that. And I do agree. I think the Braves are going to make a push at some point like they did it last year. I think they're still too good. I know they've dealt with some problems as well. But to me, I think the Mets are going to be okay. This will hurt a little bit. McGill's starting to throw, so maybe he'll be back soon. But what you're going to have to do now is rely on Taijuan Walker to be consistent, Carlos Carrasco to be like how he's been, Bassett, who's come over and done pretty well as well. And this lineup with Marte, who's been good, with Alonso, who obviously has been great. Dominic Smith. That's a thing too, and I like Dom Smith, but barring some injury or anything, he just does not have really a consistent spot. He might be the guy that has to get dealt for the Mets to get another big-time bat or possibly a relief pitcher or starting pitcher in here. And by the way, how fortunate now are the Mets that they did not make that trade for Chris Paddock.
Thank goodness for them they did not.
Because now Paddock needs Tommy John surgery. So yeah, I think things are all right in Mets land. I mean, everybody's going to say, "Oh, wait, June's coming around, the June swoon." I disagree. This to me is a different team this year. And if it's going to be a swoon, it's not going to be a complete free fall swoon. I think it might be just a spot where they might still be contending for a wild card. But if that's the case, look, what you're going to have with the Mets this year is a relevant team that's going to compete, contend, and give you their best. And that's something that you haven't had in Flushing in years now. So enjoy it. And to me, that's why I think Buck Showalter was such a great move, getting him to be the manager of this team, because you've seen it now in the clubhouse, you've seen it on the roster with the lineup and everything else. I think the Mets are going to be all right.
Yeah.
Now, as far as the Yankees go, they've lost now 3 in a row. It's been that's a bit of a concern, but there's a lot. But I think the Yankees, I mean, look, they need to get off to a strong start. They've done that. There's a lot that you got to like. Big deal with the Yanks right now also is this situation with Josh Donaldson. And, he was suspended for 1 game. He came out on Monday for the comments made about Tim Anderson. And, it's a very tricky subject to talk about because we don't know. I still think that there's something else to this because these two guys got into it when they were playing in Chicago. We know Donaldson used to be in Minnesota, so Anderson knows him well there. I think there's something else to this that we just don't know about. So it's kind of tricky to talk about, but we have to just bring up the news that Donaldson was suspended because of the situation involving with Tim Anderson this past weekend when the Yanks and the White Sox were playing. Now, as far as the team on the field goes, look, now they've lost 2 in a row to the White Sox. They've lost to the Orioles. I think everybody's just got to relax. Now, they do have their first bit of adversity here because, Chad Green and Luis Yeel, both are undergoing Tommy John surgery. So they went from perfectly healthy to now 2 of their pitchers, one very valuable relief pitcher, one that they were looking at the future, both not only being out this year, but into next year as well. But I think you look at this team and they definitely, you see a lot that you got to like. And I know we've spoken about this before. As much as I didn't like the way the roster was constructed, the way it's constructed is, I believe, why they are 29-13 right now, Hank, because like I've told you before, the fact that Aaron Boone now has that ability to fluctuate the DH position and give guys half a day here or there, maybe a full day if you want to give them a game off, I think is helping them be healthy and producing the way they've been producing so far.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think we know that am I echoing? Never mind. Sorry. I thought I heard an echo, but
no, you're not at Yankee Stadium. You're here. You're good.
That's a good one. No, I think the Yankees will end up being fine. And yeah, I think, like you said, it's great that we have more depth in our lineup than we realized. However, with that being said, losing Chad Green is definitely going to hurt because he has shown to be the most consistent of the relief pitchers that they've had over the past few years. And he's come up big and really saved the bullpen, especially during moments where Aroldis Chapman has had his, moments. But at the end of the day, I think the Yankees will somehow find a way to replace Chad Green. I think you know how it is with relief pitchers. They somehow will be good one year, bad another year, and then they'll fluctuate, and then you somehow go out and find another relief pitcher. So I don't think that's as big of an injury as people are making it out to be. But with that said, it does hurt. And Luis Yeel, I think, hurts me more, if only because he's younger, and I really thought maybe he was going to emerge as a possible future closer. But again, we're probably not going to know what happens with him until possibly even 2024, because pitchers can take a while to really return from Tommy John. And yeah, it really stinks. But I think the silver lining is the starting rotation is definitely better than it's been in years past. And, as you alluded to, if you can have your DH be interchangeable, that's key. And you know, you have a 3-game losing streak. I mean, look, as much as you hate to lose to the Orioles, like that was bound to happen. The Orioles are in their division. All they got to do is just take care of business for the remainder of the series. And you know what? I think the Yankees find a way to bounce back. A three-game losing streak, 3-game losing streak. It was inevitable. They haven't lost a series. Ironically, they haven't even lost a series since that one against the Orioles, where we heard all those people in Twitter land complaining that the season was over. But
Yeah.
I guess now that parade down Canyon Heroes is canceled. So it is.
Yeah. You know, the thing about Chad Green that does kind of hurt a little bit is he actually was a very durable guy. I mean, he has pitched, he's pitched. He hasn't really had a trip to the injury list since I believe it was 2016. And
That's right.
one of those guys that in the beginning could give you a spot start. He could close. He could long relief. He could short relief. I don't think the injury is going to hurt that much because you actually really have found another Chad Green on that team, and that is Michael King, who has actually been amazing. I mean, there's been talk about him possibly going to be in the closer's role now with Aroldis Chapman and his struggles. And there has been talk also that Aroldis Chapman is dealing with an Achilles injury. There hasn't been an IL designation yet, but if there could be one upcoming if that ends up being kind of significant. But
Could be Clay Holmes too.
What's that?
Clay Holmes too.
With how well he's pitching? Yeah, I think Clay Holmes could be your closer. See, to me, I thought the Yankees' future closer was going to be Jonathan Loáisiga, and right now he's pitching to a 7 ERA, so it's not looking that great yet. But you've got guys in this bullpen that have been doing very well. Even Miguel Castro, when they made that swap with the Mets for Joely Rodriguez, Miguel Castro, for the most part, has pitched all right, too. So the pitching staff has been pretty good. And like you said, the rotation, to me, I think, was a big question mark, and they've definitely exceeded expectations. You know, Garrett Cole's turned it around. I know he had a little bit of a rough start, but he still gave you 8 innings last night. But, Montgomery's been great, even though he's gotten literally no run support. Tyone's turned it around. Severino, who I thought was a big key to them because he was going to determine, I think he was that swing guy who's going to determine how deep your rotation is. And obviously the best pitcher in baseball right now, Nestor Cortez, has really – taking the league by storm with how well he's doing. And I think part of the reason why Nestor Cortez can be like this is he is a guy that does not throw 100 miles an hour. He's one of those guys that, will get you out at 90. He'll hit the corners. He'll mix in some breaking pitches. So the fact that he doesn't beat you with velocity, I think, is great because that's what pitchers really are right now. They're focusing on velocity more than, pinpoint location like back in the day.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think, what was I going to say? Loáisiga is another example, by the way, of pitchers who, can fluctuate. Had that really good year the second half of 2021. In fact, Johnny, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I really think his injury in September of that year was a big reason why the Yankees ended up having to play on the road in that wild card game. But in any event,
it was part of it.
In any event, he could very well have shown signs of like rust or whatnot for why he's off to a bad start. I think he might find a way to bounce back. I still think Loáisiga has good stuff regardless.
I do, and I said to you before the show and in times past that I think he's the future Yankee closer. I think he could be that good. And you don't know if maybe that shoulder injury that he had at the end of last year might be carrying over into this year. Mm-hmm. But you also do have a lot of other options. What Clay Holmes is doing, which is not really being talked about, is remarkable. I mean, he's doing things that Yanks haven't seen in years. So
they got him from the Pirates essentially for free.
Yeah, and they seem to always make a lot of moves with the Pirates. And but yeah, he's been good. He was good over there in Pittsburgh too. I remember watching him, and he was pretty good over there. And we'll see. I mean, don't be surprised if the Yanks end up having to add another guy down the road. And this lineup, like we said, they're being Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton yet again. Absolutely remarkable what they're doing. I mean, Judge right now on pace to have a 60 home run season. And maybe some of that has to do with the fact that he's a free agent or the fact that right now that he's really healthy. Because, him and Stanton were healthy last year, and those two carried the team into that wild card game. So
what's funny? You're going to like this comparison that I'm about to make. But, in the past few years, I kept wondering, are we ever going to see them play together? It's kind of like how Knicks fans in the late 80s were wondering if they could ever see Bernard King play with Patrick Ewing. Unfortunately, we know that didn't happen. But, now that they're finally together, either one of them, it's usually either one or both of them that ends up hitting home runs and bunches at the same time. So definitely helps to have them, and I hope we see more of this over the course of the season. Let me just knock on my wooden desk that nothing serious happens to either of those guys.
Yeah, and it's just crazy because they're both pretty much the same player when you look at it,
Mm-hmm.
either defensively or offensively. That's why I wasn't really in love with the whole Stanton trade, because you already had a Stanton-like player in Judge on the roster. Now, both together, though, it started to pay dividends. I mean, again, we got to be fair. Those two carried them into September last year, and they made an unbelievable run the last couple of weeks of the season last year to get them into that wild card game. So, yeah, that. But I think also you got a healthy DJ LeMahieu. You've got, Connor Falefa, who's done very, very well over there at short now. I mean, I know he's had his spurts, but he's been all right. Anthony Rizzo has given you almost as much production now than he did when he was here late last year. I think what you're going to be concerned about with the Yanks. I'm not worried about catcher because, let's be honest, I mean, if they're calling a good game and the pitching's well, you could live with the lack of production at catcher. You knew that was going to be a production, an area or a position, I should say, that you really were not going to get a lot offensively from, but defensively and pitching wise, you could live with that. Your concern with the Yanks really is left field and center field with Gallo and Hicks. And look, I'm going to defend Aaron Hicks here, and I may get a lot of blow for saying this. The guy hasn't really played the last couple of years. He's played more this year than he did all of last year. And then you have to remember the year before was obviously the COVID year, and then he was hurt in 19. So he's been hurt a lot. So he hasn't really had full seasons. It might take him a couple of months to really get going. And the one thing about Aaron Hicks is, for as low a batting average that he has, he gets on base. So I can't really criticize him. I know he's getting picked off at second base. I know that he's not really hitting, but he's getting on base. Not everybody can be an all-star on this team.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
Joey Gallo's got control, so
he's
not going anywhere. If the Yanks really wanted to make a move, I said this at the end of the offseason, and I think I might have even said it on your show, or I might have even said it here. If the Yanks
said it on both.
On everything, well, I'll say it again right now if I had. The Yanks, and they're not going to do this, obviously, but if they wanted to go into a different direction with Gallo, Judge, and Stanton, who are pretty much the same player, then one of them needed to be traded in the offseason. But now that they're all here, it's all working out all right. I think everybody's just got to relax. I mean, Gallo's going to have his power moments. He's going to play well defensively in left field. He's going to strike out a ton. That's who he is. He's not making much money. So you know what? You're going to stick him out there. Now, what do you think between that and Hicks?
I tend to agree. I think Hicks is a guy that I am more of a fan of for the lineup, if only for the sheer fact that, he gets on base. But look, don't get me wrong. I was never really the biggest fan of giving him a 7-year contract because, look, he's not a guy who consistently hits for average, and he's also somebody who's more of like a defensive fielder. So I can see the criticisms in that, and I can see why people don't really like that idea. But at the end of the day, yeah, he does get on base, but he is a bit of an enigma in the sense that, like, whenever he's up with runners in scoring position, he doesn't always come through. But still, I don't mind having him at like the bottom of the order. And then, like you said, you really can't have everything in this lineup. So it's what it is. And as far as Joey Gallo is concerned, look, I'm not the craziest about Joey Gallo either. In fact, if you asked me when the Gallo trade happened, I was not the biggest fan because I knew what we were going to get out of Joey Gallo. But if you want to know the silver lining, he's another left-handed hitter. He's a decent fielder, got a good arm, and when he does hit the ball, it goes out. So, unfortunately, it's a trade-off, but, it's what it is. You just have to live with it, and thank goodness that Joey Gallo is not a guy that's stuck here with an albatross. Otherwise, it'd be so much worse.
Definitely. I want to bring up one more baseball nugget before we move on. I don't know if you saw it in the game against the White Sox this past weekend, but Yohan Moncada bunted against the shift and got a double out of it. And
was that a doubleheader?
Yes, it was game one of the doubleheader. Because I was going back and forth with people on Twitter while the Ranger game was happening.
Was that game on Prime, by the way? Sorry to keep interrupting.
It was.
Yeah, I was in the city, so no wonder I would have missed that.
Did you see two problems with baseball, or one problem now, one problem that's going to happen next year was in that one play?
Folks, you know where this is going.
Oh, that's why I'm bringing it up. I have to do it. I mean, just because it bothered my mind that here we have Yohan Moncada trying to get on base. They're giving him the whole left side of the infield, and he's bunting against the shift, and he gets on base. And the first thing that came to my mind, there's two things that came to my mind. One, smart. He's getting on base by beating the shift. But then number two, this just goes back to what we've had on this show and on Empty the Bench and all of our sports shows. Just the thought of next season that the shift is going to get banned. It just continues to just aggravate me like crazy. And I say it like now, you don't ban the shift, you beat it. Because if you beat the shift, you know what these teams are going to do? They're going to ban it manually. They will not shift against you anymore. So good for Yohan Moncada to do that. And for anybody to say that that's terrible or we didn't come here to see bunt, shame on you. Because you know what? The number one job for a baseball player is to get on base. And then you know what? The big power guys can drive them in. That's how you're supposed to play baseball. Not this new way of, launch angle and trying to hit 450-foot solo home runs when you're down 7-0. No, get on base and get him in. So good for Yohan Moncada, and shame on Rob Manfred for once again trying to ruin the game by trying to ban a defensive style. I don't see Roger Goodell. Yes, good old Rob Manfred doing it once again to this great sport of baseball. I don't see Roger Goodell saying to banning a defense, telling me that I can't line up in a 4-3 or a 3-4 zone. But we can't line up defensively against a player because that's how he is. So Yohan Moncada showing him how it's done there by getting on base. So once again, good job by you, Moncada, and shame on Rob Manfred for once again not making. I'm not able to watch that game even though I have Amazon Prime because I'm not going out of my way to watch a baseball game on like that. So
yeah, I was gonna add the Amazon Prime part to your rant.
I'm more livid about the Apple TV thing because
but with me, I was literally on my way to like a bar to like have a beer or two before the Rangers game, and then I think I was in Pennsylvania 6, but like I was looking. It has this big TV. It had so many games. It had the Stanley Cup. It had another random baseball game. Couldn't find the Yankees, but then only when I walked into MSG did I realize that it was on Amazon Prime. And you know what? Just for that, you know exactly who I'm gonna blame.
That's him. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm sorry. And again, I get that streaming, a lot of people are streaming it, but I still need to know how the Apple TV package, the Amazon Prime, the Peacock, how that grows the game. Because I'll tell you, the Peacock games, yes, you can see them on TV. Yes, I love early baseball. I love early sports. I mean, as somebody who gets up early for work every day, I like the early start times. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
How does it grow the game? You think somebody on a Sunday afternoon now, as we head towards June, Hank, I'll give you this a perfect example. On June 5th, the Yankees are playing the Tigers at 11:30 in the morning. Do you think people are going to wake up, on a Sunday morning? Sometimes that's their day to sleep in late, and are going to rush to get to the TV at 11:30 and rush to what they need to do to get to watch a baseball game in the start of the summer season. And you're playing a game at 11:30 in the morning, and that's another thing too. The weather, it could be almost 90 degrees by noon when these games are starting.
Yeah, no. Not very smart thinking. Once again, do I even have to say it?
Yeah, good old Rob Manfred. What other sport would do something like this?
Yeah, I can't think of it. And make no mistake, I wouldn't mind trying to get to that game early. Granted, I would have to wake up at like maybe 8:30 or 9 to take like an hour train into the stadium, but still.
That's sleeping in for me.
Or if I were crazy enough to drive to the Bronx, which I've done a few times this season. By the way, for those of you who are watching, and if you live in Westchester or Stamford, I don't really entirely recommend that. Getting out of there is pretty dangerous. But in any event, yeah, you'd still have to pretty much wake up early to get there anyways. So yeah, again, thanks, Manfred.
Yeah. Let's say it again. He's the worst commissioner in sports. He's worse than Bettman. He's worse than Silver. And yes, he's worse than Goodell. I'm sorry. I'm sure we'll be going through this week in and week out, but when the CBA is up again in 5 years or so, we were going through this all over again with baseball. But let's take a deep breath and let's move on to a couple other things here while we still can. Big story in college football this past week. We've got less than 100 days now until college football returns, and this story just completely blew up this past week. Nick Saban, the great head coach over at Alabama, was telling business leaders in the state that Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher, quote unquote, bought every player with NIL deals. And boy, I tell you, when I saw this break, Hank, I was like, wow. Well, first of all, what Nick Saban is, he's an old school kind of guy. He's been in Alabama for a long time. Alabama's been one of the most successful teams in college football over the last decade plus. So he's kind of like an old school mentality. And look, my thoughts about NIL. I'm not a fan of them. I think it's crazy. There's this story about some kid that's going to USC that's going to be making $3.5 million. I think he's transferring from Pittsburgh to go to USC for $3.5 million. He's almost making more than what Kenny Pickett's going to be making with the Steelers this year. I think that's crazy. Look, these kids, you have to remember one thing, Hank. The kids that are entering college, with whether you're an athlete or whatnot, they are students first and athletes second. And to me, the fact that we're doing this NIL deal, I think, is totally reversing that and making the student an athlete first and a student second. And I just don't think that's how we should be treating our kids and the mentality. But this whole story just crazy, considering how successful Bama's been, and Jimbo Fisher taking shots and stuff like that. Saban had said that Alabama players were doing it the right way, the right way last year, but he is also not the first coach to call out the A&M Aggies by name. We saw in February that Lane Kiffin, the head coach at Ole Miss, he said, quote, Texas A&M was going to incur a luxury tax in how much they paid for their signing class. So all this coming out, what did you think about this when this broke?
My first thought was, okay, first of all, you're Nick Saban. You've won a lot. I'm sure there are people who've jokingly accused you of buying like every player and somehow being one of the best recruiters. So why are you going to really get to complain about this whole thing? But then my second thing was, again, I got to look more into this. But then from what I saw in Jimbo Fisher's press conference, he seemed pretty adamant that whole buying of the player allegation was false. And he gave like full details as to why that's the case. And I tend to side with Fisher only because if you look at his mannerisms and the way he talked during that press conference, I think he knows what he was doing. And he was able to really explain full well why Texas A&M was innocent. Then I don't really see how like they had a problem. But in any event, I think what it also will do is it adds more juice because, Johnny, correct me if I'm wrong, don't they play each other like right at the beginning of the season?
A&M and Alabama in Tuscaloosa on October the 8th. That is
my gosh, that's going to get – I bet you that's going to juice up the ratings for that game, will it not? So that'll be a lot of fun. And I think hopefully
I don't think they need any more, but this will definitely help them. If that game's – I have to check the start time on it, but I'm going to assume that is a 3:30 Eastern game on CBS.
Can you imagine if that game was in Texas A&M as opposed to Alabama? I think Saban and those players would get booed mercilessly.
Oh, that would be something. Tomorrow. I was kind of hoping when I saw that actually that was going to be the case, but
unfortunately we know it's going to be the other way around. And knowing Alabama and their history, I think we know they're probably going to end up winning. But hey, who knows? Maybe this just motivates Texas A&M even more, and it gets Alabama their what I like to call their annual regular season loss, because you know how they are. They don't lose very often.
Yeah, I'm just actually trying to find their schedule here. But yeah, no, I the whole NIL deal though, like I've said to you, I'm not a fan of it. And the other angle. And I got into this with Nick Federa over on Empty the Bench a couple of weeks ago, because Nick was telling me about how much the schools are making and how much the coaches are making, and I totally get the school angle of it, but that still though doesn't really talk about this whole conversation in general. And as far as like how much the coaches are making when it comes to this, because you got Dabo Sweeney at Clemson making $10 million a year, Saban's making a lot, and I get that. But these guys went through school. They did their service. So you know what? If they want to make all that money, kudos to them. That's not really the issue. Is how much that they're making. I understand that, but they did their part already. These guys are still students first and athletes second. So that's what really bothers me. And I know the Supreme Court came down with that decision, last summer about the whole NIL deal. And unfortunately, I knew it was kind of inevitable we were going down that way. But yeah, I just don't agree with it. Let's see here. The game against A&M. I know they came out with some big games, some games already, but I don't see it yet. I know that Bama is going to be playing Texas at Longhorn Stadium on September the 10th. I saw that my Fighting Irish are starting out against Ohio State in prime time, which is going to be absolutely brutal. But I've always liked college football. Now I moved down to South Carolina 7.5 years ago. It just takes up. Still is to be determined. All right, so I just got a message. It's still to be determined. Yeah, those times are still coming out. They've come out with some games, but not all of them yet. So that's the case. But whatever it is, I'm sure that might be a situation we might put that game on in prime time. But that usually an A&M Alabama game, the way that is at Tuscaloosa, that'll probably be a 3:30 Eastern game, I would imagine, on CBS on October the 8th. I tell you, the college football season's fun. They have the best structure of all the sports, either pro or collegiate, because every game means something. The playoff, I mean, it's perfect. So I'm excited for it. I know you want to get through the summer. We've got a lot of great baseball here too. We still got playoffs, so I'm not going to rush it. But
no, college football's great. I just need to follow it more. Even though as like a casual Michigan fan, I'm probably going to be disappointed every year. But it is what it is.
Hey, look, they did great last year, and
no, I was happy for them.
Yeah, that was a pretty cool them beating Ohio State at the end of last year, and the crowd rushing, and it was good for Jim Harbaugh there in Michigan, and we'll see what they do. No, it's cool. The problem is like living up there, and this is what I tell people: college football is not a thing up in the New York area. The reason why I was a Notre Dame fan was because when I was little, they would always be on national TV every week, and I'd watch them with my dad. So that was part of it, and I became a fan, and now it's transpired. Now we've got a new coach. No more Brian Kelly, which is going to be very interesting to see what he does down there at LSU. But Notre Dame now, they have some challenging games, but they need to have that because Notre Dame, while they don't play in a conference, they have to go undefeated just to be talked about as a college football playoff contender. Just we have to. So it's all fine though. It'll be a fun season like it always is. And this story just crazy. And I don't think this is going to be the last time you see these two go at it. By the way, that handshake at the end of the game is going to be something to watch too. At the end on October the 8th, they might just look at each other and go right on by. Although maybe it'll be just like what we see in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Even though they beat each other up, they end up doing the handshake line, which is like the coolest thing, by the way, in all of sports.
Oh, it's great.
I wish all the sports would take part in that, but that is a cool thing. That's why the Stanley Cup playoffs are the best.
I have another tangent about why the Stanley Cup playoffs are the best too, but you're going to hear that later on once that goes and ends up with the Stanley Cup champion.
Stay tuned, folks. By the way, speaking of playoffs, we got the NBA playoffs, and really, there's not much really to say about them, Hank, because to be perfectly clear, they've been pretty much blowouts for the most part. We've got the Warriors at 3-0 against the Mavericks. We've got the Heat and the Celtics, which looks like it's going to go 7, but boy, that series has been ones where teams get out to big leads. We've had injuries. The Celtics have dealt with Marcus Smart being out for a little while. That Robert Williams has always been a question mark. The Heat now, Lowry's been in and out.
We've got Horford too now.
Yeah, Horford was in health and safety protocol, and he cleared that. He's been in and out. But even on the Heat side, last night Tyler Hero was out. Kyle Lowry's been dealing with a hamstring injury for most of the playoffs. Even Jimmy Butler's been dealing with a knee problem. But boy, I'll tell you, these games really have not been close. And I just look at it from the 4, and I'll just use my NBA playoffs point on this. I look at the 4 teams that are left, and boy, I'll tell you, the Warriors to me are just so complete. They've been healthy, which has been a big thing. There have been teams that have been missing their key players throughout. We talked about even on the Mavericks at the start of the postseason, the Mavericks were missing Doncic for the first couple, and as well as
I thought they were going to get bounced by the Jazz. Shows what I know.
Yeah, no, that's actually the NBA playoffs in some ways, though, been unpredictable because, look, a lot of the experts, including us, were thinking the Phoenix Suns were going to go all the way. But I've been on the
Not
Warriors. No, and I've been on the Warriors train since the postseason started just because I think they are that deep. When you look at, Curry, Thompson, Draymond Green, and then even when you add in Jordan Poole and Andrew Wiggins, they've got so much. The problem with the Mavericks is you've got Doncic, who's actually playing out of his mind, but then you don't have that other guy. I mean, they're trying to get it from Dinwiddie. You see our former guy, Jalen Brunson, who I hope is a Knick in the future, but, he's been all right. Our former Knick buddy, Reggie Bullock, who had an awful game the other night, going over. But, boy, you look at the four teams that are left, and how do you not pick the Golden State Warriors in this spot to go all the way with how deep they are? They are pretty much healthy out of the four teams that are left. The Heat-Celtics series might just be a survival of the fittest at this point because they're all going down and might be literally like a last team standing over there in the East.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've also been on the Warrior train because for pretty much the same reason. They're deep. You've got. I hate that there are people that call it PTSD, but Poole, Steph, Poole,
Thompson,
Steph, Draymond. First of all, I hate that abbreviation, but it's still a great four that you got there, and you still have other good supporting cast like Andrew Wiggins, and then what's the other guy's name? Kuminga, and why am I?
I'll tell you, I'll just say this though, Andrew Wiggins, who was a number 1 overall pick several years ago, slotted into the role that he's slotting into is almost being like a number 1 guy out over there. It is truly amazing, and it's almost like what they've done with Wiggins and Poole is they've taken the roles that Livingston and Andre Iguodala were doing in their first run. And, we've talked about how the Lightning are now in 6 conference finals in the last 8 years. You've got the Warriors here who are trying to make
Looney, that was the guy I was thinking of.
Kevin Looney?
Yeah, Looney.
Okay. Kevin Looney, yep. He's also been very good, too. I mean, all these guys. I mean, even, Otto Porter, Toscano Anderson, all these guys producing for them. And they're trying to make their 6th final in the last 8 years, which is the closest thing to a dynasty that you'll see. So you have the Lightning in the NHL going for their 6th conference final in 8 years, and you've got now the Warriors 1 win away from their 6th NBA final in the last 8 years. It's just absolutely remarkable.
And I don't care that they've lost 2 of those finals. The fact that they're going to be in another one, and the fact that I think they will probably more than likely win that final is just impressive to me.
And let me just take that back real quick. The Warriors are in their 6th conference final in the last 8 years, and the Lightning are now in their 6th in 8 years as well. So they're already in 6 and 8, and the Lightning are now in the conference final for 6 out of 8. So, but still, I mean, what the Warriors have done here, even pre and post Kevin Durant, is just amazing. And all like we've spoken about it before. You know what it starts with? It starts with not only superstars but a core group of players. And you don't usually see that in the NBA because a lot of these guys, they don't stay on the team for that long. And now here you've had Curry, you had Thompson, you had Green all together for so long, and then you add in these other guys. Bringing in a Wiggins who's been transformed into doing great things. Jordan Poole from Michigan, who right now is excelling in this postseason. It's remarkable. And then, like the other guys that you said, Looney, his role, Otto Porter. I mean, they've got a bunch of contributing guys, but it really all starts with those core group of players for the Warriors. And I just think what it is too. I'm not taking anything away from the Heat or the Celtics, but the problem is when you can't be healthy, and you've got like on the Heat side, like we've mentioned, you've had Lowry miss a couple of games here and there. Jimmy Butler now is dealing with a knee problem. You've had Tyler Hero, the 6th man of the year. He was out for Game 4. On the Celtics side, Marcus Smart's been in and out. You've had Robert Williams, who's been in and out. You just don't know what team you're going to get over there, and then you're seeing those guys blow each other out. I think it's really more so the injury factor than anything over in the East.
Yeah. Again, survival of the fittest. That's pretty much. I know I described that about the Stanley Cup playoffs, but in a way, that's been true about the NBA playoffs. Although usually with the NBA playoffs, I say it usually comes down to the superstars. So that's probably going to be true as well. But yeah, I have a feeling the Heat and the Celtics are just going to continue beating each other up, getting a game 7, and whoever wins that game 7, you're going to be like, yay, we won. And it's like, oh, we're so tired. We got to deal with the Golden State Warriors. I know I'm over dramatizing the thing, but that's basically what it is.
The leading scorer on the Heat in Game 4 was Victor Oladipo, who's gone through so many injuries himself to get to where he's been at. But Jimmy Butler was 3 of 14. Kyle Lowry 1 of 6. Gabe Vincent 2 of 10. So, those guys, they're going to be like that. I think the Celtics, and I said the Celtics in 7 when we did our NBA roundtable. But yeah, to me though, the Warriors are still just the best team remaining of the 4. And yeah, maybe the Mavericks win Game 4, but I don't think this series is long out there west. I always said Warriors in 5, and I said Celtics in 7, and right now it's looking like that. But like we said, survival of the fittest in the East. Celtics deal with some problems. See, the Celtics, though, still also have Jason Tatum and, Al Horford, and, Robert Williams being back helps. So I just still think at the end of the day, I think the Celtics are a little bit better than the Heat, and they're going to get out.
Yeah, I do too, but by the close of margin.
Yeah, it's just been a dud because you've seen a lot of blowouts in these NBA playoffs. That's been the thing. I mean, you really haven't had a close game here in quite some time. And sometimes the final scores might actually be a little bit misleading. That's.
By the way, fun fact: if the Celtics go to the finals, it would only be their 3rd trip since the wall was knocked down.
Fun fact, there it is. Yep. The other fun fact, and I think you had brought this up in episode number 10 about the Celtics being in half the conference.
That's correct. They have been
incredible when you think about it. I mean, obviously we know those dynasties back in the day, but even now,
60s and in the 80s,
yeah, truly amazing. And here are the Knicks who just can't even get into the playoffs in the 21st century, except twice. And yeah, but
hopefully our day will come. We'll celebrate a title one of these days.
Next year playoff team. Is that much to ask?
Yeah, let me just turn around and bless these jerseys for good luck.
A little behind the scenes there of the Hank Studios. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, just for the fun of it. Why not?
There we go, folks. If the Knicks make the playoffs this year, we will cherish this moment on episode 11 of Game On as the turning point when it turned around.
I know it would mean more for you than it would me because, we're pretty much opposites with where we stand on the Rangers and the Knicks, but we would both enjoy it very much. That much you cannot dispute.
Absolutely. All right, Hank, I got a couple of quick stories here before we get out of here. While the Rangers were playing in Game 4 and while the playoffs were going on, PGA Championship this weekend, unbelievable story. Justin Thomas was trailing by 7 shots entering the final round. I watched most of the Saturday coverage of it with Mito Pereira, who was putting on a clinic, and he was entering it real well. And Justin Thomas was hanging in there, Will Zalatoris. I couldn't believe then on Sunday what happened, and watching how JT came back in this and winning in the 3-hole playoff. A truly remarkable thing when you look at it. I don't know how much you saw of it. I mean, I know what I showed you, the one moment that I know you caught your attention, but this was just incredible.
Yeah, no, that one I'm sure was pretty amazing. I obviously was too distracted by my certain hockey team.
Understandably so.
Yeah, no, I definitely might have to check that out. It sounded like a pretty good championship.
Yeah, and I'll get to Tiger in just a second because what wouldn't a major or golf be without a Tiger Woods discussion? But
true that.
Did you see I think it was on I forget what hole exactly it was, but did you see the shot from, I believe it was either JT or Zalatoris when he shot it, and then there was a spectator in the gallery that yelled, "Rangers in 6!"
Yes, that I heard. That was awesome.
That's another reason why I had to bring up the story too. So yeah, there's a spectator that and we'll put it, and I'll retweet it on the Game On ETB account on Twitter, and also on maybe our guys over there at the Empty the Bench podcast network will get it as well. But yeah, somebody had it was right after the Rangers win that they shot and somebody in the gallery yelled the Rangers in 6. It was remarkable. At first, I thought it was actually something that was just edited into there, but no, it actually was somebody that was there.
No way they could have added that.
Well, it would have been something, but yeah, congratulations to Justin Thomas winning his second major there at the PGA Championship and a big comeback. The other big thing with the PGA Championship this weekend was Tiger Woods coming back again. And, he had a rally, and it was nice drama on Friday to see him making the cut. But, boy, Saturday, just a hard watch. 9 over 79. And I tell you, he's trying to – it's an unbelievable story that he's back out on the golf course. But I got to tell you, Hank, this is getting hard to watch. And, you've got the U.S. Open happening in June. A 12 over at the U.S. Open, he might have a chance. But he's doing 12 over at the PGA Championship. What's he going to do at the Open? It's just it's hard to watch. It's great that he's back out there on the course, don't get me wrong, but this is just brutal.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much how it feels anytime you see an athlete who gets up there, but after like a nasty injury. It's tough to see when the athlete knows he's like one of the last people who knows it might be time to wrap it up, but it is what it is. You still want to cherish whatever memories you enjoy of watching Tiger Woods play golf, even though I have my own reasons for not being a fan of him. And I'm not going to get into it, but I'm sure those who are watching, why.
Understandably so, yeah. And, I still think golf's in a great spot because you've got a lot of good young players that are playing. So, of course, Tiger's the big name. Phil Mickelson's a big name. He's obviously mired in some controversy as well right now. But, he's getting up there in age. But I think that the sport's in good shape. And I got to tell you, as great as it is to see Tiger out there, as cool as it was to watch him Friday afternoon into evening, rally to make the cut at the PGA Championship, it's just also, then he goes out there on Saturday and shoots a 9 over 79. It's like, oh, God, it's like, it's great that he made it, but it's just like, how much more can you take of it? It's tough. But you just want him to get better, first of all. And, it's just hard. But
yep.
Yeah. And then one other thing real quick before we get out of here. The Preakness happened on Saturday too, the 147th running, and early voting won the Preakness. And of course, this was a little not as exciting because obviously Rich Strike, who ran in the Kentucky Derby and ran last minute literally and won the Derby. It was announced that he was not going to run in this. And he's going to probably run in the Belmont on June the 11th. Belmont always a special thing for me because it's normally the one day per year that my hometown of Elmont, New York gets put on the map. Shout out to all my friends back home in Elmont. But yeah, it's usually the one day a year that we can put on there. And it looks like he's going to race there. And early voting, who won this race, may not be running in the Belmont, but it's still a Triple Crown race. So, always like to bring up the big horse racing things. And I'll give you a funny story before we get out of here. So do you know the voice of the Minnesota Vikings on their radio, Paul Allen?
Oh yeah, I love that guy. He's had some of the best lines in NFL history.
Absolutely. And he is the voice of Canterbury Park in Minnesota. So he does horse race. He calls races. He's been doing it for I think 24 years or so. And I will put on the live stream of Canterbury Park Wednesday, Thursday, and I think they race on Saturday and possibly Sunday too. And you hear him call a race, it's awesome. So, there's always, when you watch that, you have a football connection and that translates into that. So it's always a cool thing. But so early voting wins the Preakness. Of course, all the political people, we're having fun with that name. But so early voting wins that. We got the Belmont, which will be my hometown event. That'll happen in a couple of weeks. So, Hank, we've got a lot happening in the future here. And, we'll see. Obviously, the big thing for us happens Tuesday night, and that's Game 4, Rangers and Canes, and then Thursday will be Game 5. And by the time we're here next week, we'll see where we are at.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm really looking forward to it.
Keeping
my fingers crossed, keeping the faith as pretty much I always do.
Before we get
always.
That's right. Before we go, give me one more rally towel.
Oh,
wait, there it is. All right, folks. Of course, Game On is presented by Knack. Make sure when you go to checkout, use the code GAME, GAME at checkout, and you will get a free TSA-approved lock for a limited time. Just add that to the Knack bag of your choice, and you'll get it for free. Knack Bags are proud to have them as the sponsor here of not only Game On, but Empty the Bench as well. So, Hank, let's go Rangers. That's right. For Hank Indictor, I am Johnny Montalbano. This has been episode 11 of Game On, and the two of us will talk to you again for episode 12 next week.